Coming up in a newscast, President Yoon Suk Yeol ordered officials to respond with absolute retaliation and punishment to any North Korean provocation. He emphasized it's the most effective way to deter such actions by the regime. The Yoon administration unveiled its own Indo-Pacific strategy. It centers on freedom and solidarity as well as inclusiveness. South Korea's unmanned space vehicle Danuri successfully entered the moon's orbit. The Pathfinder lunar orbiter accomplished this feat earlier than planned. Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. President Yoon ordered officials to respond with absolute retaliation and punishment to any provocation by North Korea, saying that's the most effective way to deter such actions. According to the Senior Secretary for Public Relations, Kim Jong-un, the Commander-in-Chief also urged people not to allow North Korea's nuclear weapons to instill fear. Yoon canceled his original schedule and held a meeting with his secretaries and national security officials to discuss the recent intrusion of 5 North Korean drones into South Korea's airspace. On Thursday, he will visit the Defense Development Agency to review surveillance and recon readiness. On the day of the intrusion, President Yoon reportedly called for an eye response, ordering officials to send 2 or 3 drones across the border for every one sent by the North. South Korea approved major projects to upgrade combat capabilities of its F-15K fighters and import 2 aerial refueling tankers, part of efforts to counter continuing threats from North Korea. According to the Defense Acquisition Program Administration, from 2024, the country will spend nearly 3.5 trillion won, or over $2.7 billion, to strengthen the mission capabilities and survivability of the F-15Ks until 2034. The project includes replacing old radar systems with more advanced ones. For the 2 refueling tankers, it will spend 1.2 trillion won, or roughly $950 million, for 5 years from 2024. The Yoon administration unveiled its Indo-Pacific strategy. The focus is on promoting inclusiveness, trust, and reciprocity in the region. Kim Dami has the details.
A free, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific rooted in inclusiveness, trust, and reciprocity. This is the core vision of South Korea's Indo-Pacific strategy unveiled on Wednesday in the nation's first ever comprehensive regional diplomacy strategy.
The announcement today of our Indo-Pacific strategy marks a new chapter in Korean diplomacy, hailing a new era of proactive Korean diplomacy in regional and global affairs. You can regard this as the foreign policy doctrine of the Yoon Suk Yeol government.
According to the Foreign Ministry, the diplomatic strategy encompasses economy and security, shifting gears from addressing issues on the Korean Peninsula to the global and Indo-Pacific region. The new vision projects the values of freedom and solidarity, something that President Yoon has long stressed, including in his inauguration speech as well as his address to the UN General Assembly. The presidential office also emphasized that the strategy will not exclude China amid the intensifying U.S.-China rivalry.
The meaning of inclusiveness is that the strategy does not exclude a particular nation, but is open to cooperation with all countries that align with our vision and principles.
Under the 3 cooperation principles, inclusiveness, trust, and reciprocity, Wednesday's report includes 9 core initiatives. Among these are securing a regional order based on norms and rules, strengthening cooperation in critical domains of science and technology, and beefing up non-proliferation and counterterrorism efforts across the region. The agenda extends to cooperation on promoting the rule of law and human rights, which is also in line with Washington's Indo-Pacific strategy. The White House was quick to welcome Seoul's new policy, saying it reflects the shared commitment of Seoul and Washington to the region's security and growing prosperity. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
In North Korea, the Workers' Party Central Committee continued its year-end meetings. The regime's leader announced several goals for next year that suggest there are more provocations to come. Jin Ha-young fills us in.
According to the state-run Korean Central News Agency, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has laid out new goals for bolstering the regime's military power. It said in a report on Wednesday that the goals were presented on Tuesday and the second day of a meeting of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party convened to discuss policies for next year. The goals, it said, were formulated in response to what the report called the challenging situation on the Korean peninsula as well as the international political situation, though it did not give details. It's expected, however, that Kim may have mentioned the 5 key tasks for the North Korean military that were laid out in a 5-year plan unveiled at a Workers' Party Congress in early 2021. These tasks include the continued development of weapons like intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear-powered submarines. In the meeting, Kim also announced principles in the field of foreign affairs, but the report didn't give details. Kim reportedly discussed what he referred to as the struggle against the enemy, a reference to South Korea, possibly indicating more tensions on the Korean peninsula next year. He also called for North Korea to defend its sovereignty and national interests. State media said the meeting will be continuing on Wednesday for a 3rd day, during which experts say Kim Jong-un will likely make policy announcements on other areas, including the regime's allying economy. 신하영, Arirang News.
President Yoon was briefed on policies concerning science, technology, and nuclear power. The Science Ministry plans to upgrade its space program, while the Nuclear Safety and Security Commission seeks to revive the sector. Shin Se-byuk brings the highlights from that session.
South Korea's Ministry of Science and ICT, a Nuclear Safety and Security Commission on Wednesday, presented their policy plans for the upcoming year to President Yoon. There, President Yoon spoke of the importance of science and technology as they form the basis of all industries.
이 산업이라고 하는 것은 과학 기술을 기반으로 해서 경제적 가치를 창출하는 것과 관련된 일이고, 이거는 보다 근본적으로 경제적 가치가 충분히 있을 만한 그런 개연성이 있는 과학기술, 미래 전략기술을 정부가 개발하는 데 앞장서고.
To foster science technologies, AI, and digitalization, the Science Ministry unveiled 3 key strategies. First, the ministry will look to set up a Korean version of NASA in the second half of 2023 to carry out exploration projects on the Moon and Mars. And the third launch of South Korea's first homegrown space rocket Danuri is expected for the first half of next year. Also, the government seeks to create a 50 trillion won, or roughly $40 billion fund to give financial support to homegrown space startups. Second, the ministry plans to inject 25 trillion won, or around $20 billion, into R&D for the next 5 years. This will promote and maintain growth momentum in influential and emerging sectors in both the private and public sectors. Lastly, the ministry will promote artificial intelligence and digitalization across all sectors. Under the scheme, the government will establish a special secondary school for AI education. Also, it will broaden the 5G network, and free 5G Wi-Fi services will be available on 25,000 public buses next year, up 60 times from the current number. Meanwhile, the Nuclear Safety and Security Commission's plans prioritize safety and promote trust in nuclear power plant operations. The sector has only recently regained its growth momentum after the previous administration aimed to phase out nuclear power. With the Yoon administration aiming to boost operations and exports of nuclear power plants, the Commission will ensure the safety of the country's existing reactors while thoroughly reviewing construction permits for new ones. Also, it plans to accelerate the development of small module reactors that are deemed as the future of nuclear energy. As for the planned release of the contaminated water from Japan's wrecked Fukushima nuclear power plant in the first half of next year, the NSSC vows to strengthen the monitoring of water and marine products for possible radioactivity. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
The National Assembly held a plenary session. Lawmakers only passed bills that were relatively uncontroversial, such as those related to KEPCO and KOGAS. Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
At the National Assembly, the ruling People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea had agreed to pass other pending bills once they'd passed next year's budget, which they did last Friday. The pending bills concern measures due to expire at the end of the year, including the safe trucking freight rate system that guarantees minimum freight rates for truckers, and a revision of the Labor Standards Act, which enables small businesses with fewer than 30 workers to have their employees work an additional 8 hours above the official 52-hour workweek. But the two main parties were unable to agree on these in Wednesday's plenary session. Of the bills that were passed, two of them related to the Korea Electric Power Corporation and the Korea Gas Corporation. Because of high global energy prices, the state-run electricity provider has been running a deficit and has been making up the losses by issuing bonds. The revision to the law will raise the limit on the company's debt issues from the previous 2 times its capitalization to 5 times and even 6 times with the approval of the trade minister. As for the Korea Gas Corporation Act, the changes will also raise its debt limit to 5 times capital from the current 4. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party, which has a majority in the Assembly, rejected a motion from the Justice Ministry calling for parliamentary consent to arrest lawmaker Danuri on bribery allegations. According to the law, sitting lawmakers are immune from arrest while Parliament is in session, and the arrest of a lawmaker requires the prosecution to get Parliament's consent. This motion drew a great deal of attention because the DP's leader Lee Jae-myung could also face a motion for his arrest, given the ongoing investigations into his alleged involvement in bribery. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea's unmanned space vehicle Danuri successfully entered the moon's orbit earlier than planned. According to the Science Ministry, this was achieved after just 3 rounds of lunar orbit insertion maneuvers when the original plan was 5. This is the process in which a space vehicle lowers speed and commits itself to the gravity of the moon. This makes the Korea Aerospace Research Institute the world's 7th space agency to put a satellite into lunar orbit. The orbiter will begin a year-long mission in January to measure lunar surface data and identify potential landing sites for future missions. Danuri, launched in August is South Korea's first space mission beyond the Earth's orbit. South Korea's population continues to shrink. Data also shows downturn in the housing market, and the aging population has led to a huge decline in the number of people relocating too. Yoon Jung-min helps us look beyond the digits.
The shrinking population is causing real stress for South Korea's economy and society as the number of births continues to go down while the number of deaths goes up. In October, the number of babies born fell to a little over 20,000. That's down 0.4% from a year earlier. Not only is that the lowest figure for any October since Statistics Korea started collecting data more than 4 decades ago, the number of births has been steadily declining since December 2015. The number of deaths in October, meanwhile, was up 7.3% to a new high of some 29,000. South Korea's population has now been shrinking for 3 years in a row. President Yoon's cabinet officials are looking at a range of measures to reverse trend and help people start families.
We will consider enabling more parents to reduce their working hours to look after their children. This could include raising the age limit for children for whom this system is available.
In the meantime, the country last month saw its lowest population mobility in 48 years because of a slowdown in the housing market and the aging of the population. The Statistics Agency says around 476,000 people in Korea changed their residences in November, down 16% from a year ago. In fact, from September to October, the number of homes bought and sold in Korea fell 59%. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Ukrainian forces are reportedly getting closer to recapturing Kreminna. Russian troops are intensifying attacks on Kherson and are trying to capture Bakhmut. Kim Jong-il has the latest.
British newspaper The Guardian reported on Tuesday that Ukrainian forces have edged closer to recapturing the key eastern city of Kreminna in Luhansk province. Regional Governor Serhiy Haidai said on Tuesday via telegram that Russian troops in parts of Kreminna were forced to retreat to the southeastern town of Lubizne as a result of Ukrainian military pressure. Governor Haidai also said that Moscow understands that if it loses Kreminna, its entire line of defense will fall. but added that Russian troops are bringing a huge amount of equipment and are constantly renewing their forces. Meanwhile, the BBC reported on Wednesday that civilians in the Kherson region are fleeing as Russian attacks intensify. Ukrainian forces reclaimed the southern strategic city last month, but Russian troops have escalated attacks ever since, killing at least 10 people on Saturday. The Guardian, citing Britain's defense ministry on Tuesday, said Russian troops continue to focus their efforts on capturing the city of Bakhmut in the Donetsk region. Bakhmut is a region both sides have been fighting over intensively for months now, as its strategic location leads to other major cities inside Donetsk. Moscow has mobilized the Wagner private military group in order to help seize the area since July. Kim Jong-il, Arirang News.
China announces reopening its borders on January 8th. There's expected to be a surge in demand for overseas travel, and South Korea would be a popular destination. Yoon reports.
On Monday, Chinese health authorities announced that from January 8, their management of COVID-19 will be downgraded from the current top-level Category A to the less strict Category B. They have also decided to rename what's been called the novel coronavirus pneumonia to novel coronavirus infection, suggesting that the disease has become more manageable. The deputy director of China's National Health Commission said during a press briefing in Beijing on Tuesday that China's epidemic prevention and control has entered a new stage and that this will now lead towards a post-pandemic era that will require tactful strategies to curb the virus spread. He also highlighted that withstanding the impact of 5 waves of the pandemic over the past 3 years has given the health authorities confidence in the latest decisions.
We have closely tracked the characteristics of the virus, studied and evaluated the changes in the epidemic situation, and created conditions for us to adjust the legal categorization of the novel coronavirus infection. The adjustment to Class B infectious disease under Class B management is a move after full preparations and is definitely not just passively reopening.
Medical institutions in Shanghai are making all-out efforts to respond to local residents' needs for medical help amid the latest COVID-19 surge. Many hospitals in Shanghai have enlarged their ICU capacity and increased their medicine inventories.
We prepared 120 new beds for severe cases to meet the demand for treatment. We also increased our inventory of medicine and other supplies.
For inbound passengers, Beijing has decided to scrap its current 8-day quarantine for arrivals and testing on arrival and will now only require a negative test result obtained within 48 hours prior to boarding. Outbound travel for Chinese nationals is also said to have been restored in an orderly manner. A local search observation network reported that in less than an hour after the government announcement, searches for international flights went up tenfold, with South Korea included in the top 10 destinations, along with Japan, the US, Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia. Yoon, Arirang News.
And Japan will require people arriving in the country to get tested for COVID if they've been to mainland China in the most recent 7 days. Those who test positive will have to quarantine for 7 days at a designated facility. Currently, the rule is that no test is required on arrival if a person had a negative within 72 hours of their departure. Japan is also not going to allow airlines to increase the number of flights to and from China. Japan's PM vowed to do everything possible not to impede the smooth flow of international travel. South Korean swimmer Hwang Seon-woo has been named Asian Male Swimmer of the Year by the popular swimming news site SwimSwam. This year, the 19-year-old won the men's 200-meter freestyle at the International Swimming Federation's Short Course World Championships, which just concluded last week. He set both the Asian record and the competition record with a time of 1 minute 39.72 seconds. Hwang also won silver at the Long Course World Championships held in June. SwimSwam predicts that Hwang will soon start to overtake South Korea's former national record holder Park Tae-hwan, who has 4 Olympic medals and 3 World Championship medals. In Korea, it's long been the tradition for volunteers to distribute charcoal briquettes to people who can't afford gas or electric heating. It's especially important this year because charcoal has been getting more and more expensive. Choi Min-jung has the full story.
Dozens of volunteers are roaming the streets of impoverished neighborhoods in the city of Wonju, Gangwon-do province.
Despite the freezing weather, each person is out carrying a batch of coal briquettes to hand out to the less fortunate. These coal briquettes are essential during the winter, as more than 80,000 households in South Korea still use them to heat their homes. But those households are bracing for an even colder winter this year, as prices for briquettes have soared.
The elderly who rely on coal briquettes have to live on less than $240 per month. They live in villages at high altitudes where they can't get access to gas. They also can't afford to buy fuel because it's too expensive. So they have to rely on briquettes that cost around 60 cents each. It's unfortunate.
Around 20 years ago, a block cost 24 cents, but now they cost 63 cents. And because of inflation, people need to pay more to get the briquettes delivered. This means, including the delivery fee, one briquette costs almost $1. To help people stay warm this winter, around 500 to 600 briquettes are needed per household. And to ensure people get the briquettes they need, volunteer work is needed now more than ever.
I was really sick before coming here, so I was really worried that I wouldn't be able to make it, so I went to the hospital beforehand. I'm really glad that I came to help, and I want to help out more frequently whenever I have the chance to.
Thank you very much. These are the only coal briquettes we get. No other place provides us with them. There are no words to describe how thankful I am.
Ever since the outbreak of COVID-19, donations dropped. Before the pandemic, the Papsan Community Welfare Foundation received donations of up to 5 million blocks a year, but this year they are aiming for 3 million. Donations can still be made by calling their main hotline number or through their homepage. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News, Wonju.
Expect temperatures to drop a couple of degrees for most regions. This is because a surge of Arctic air will filter into the nation again overnight. In fact, parts of central regions are currently under cold wave alerts. Conditions will be especially cold for northern Gyeonggi-do and inland areas of Gangwon-do province, where cold wave warnings are in place. Light snowfall will continue for parts of the west coast. For the coastlines of Chungcheong-do and Jeollado provinces, around 1 centimeter of snowfall is in the forecast. This round of snowfall will last until this Friday. Although total accumulations are fairly trivial, frost and ice will be possible on the roads due to freezing temperatures. Drivers are urged to use extra caution. In the regions, we'll see minus figures for the morning. Chuncheon will be especially cold at minus 13. And daily highs in Seoul will get up to minus 1, Gwangju 4, Gyeongju will be reaching 5 degrees Celsius. Temperatures will be rising from this point on, with daytime highs in the positive range. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.
A reclusive country, a small country on the map of the world, the land of morning calm, the country that had once been lost,